He's the Hall of Famer, former Knicks broadcaster, Marv Albert, joining us on the program. Marv, how's life?
Life is good, Dan. How are you doing? I must say, retirement has been great. I do miss the preparation and the people I work with, and we do stay in touch. But I am Mr. Binge TV, so and I do a lot of reading, work out, all those kind of things. But all is good. But I've been enjoying the playoffs also.
3 years ago today, you announced your retirement.
Was it to the day?
I think May 17th.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. Now, do you do any play-by-play, like around the house, a playground, anything?
Only dinner time.
Oh.
Yeah.
How often, like the strangest way you've been recognized for your voice is how?
Let's see, the strangest way? Well, it would usually happen on the phone if I'm calling for some service or, that type of thing. And I don't say my name and they pick it off. I'm always amazed by that. But usually I'm not speaking the same way I would on a game, So it's that would be a little crazy if I were doing that.
I was also wondering, Scotty Scheffler got arrested this morning going into the PGA tournament, and the strangest, like you were there when OJ, the white Bronco, the police chase, right? 94?
I was doing the game.
Yeah.
I was doing it, going back and forth with Tom Brokaw, who was following the car chase, and then I would throw it to Bob Costas or to Tom. It was one of the strangest events to cover with that going on. In fact, it was at first we're looking across the way, and there were TV screens along the press table at Madison Square Garden, and you could see people coming down to stand behind the riders to watch what was going on, and it was, and then players would come over, and check it out during timeouts. So it was kind of a weird scene. OJ was at one time doing sideline for us for NFL games.
Yeah.
And I remember I was working with Paul McGuire at the time, and we would rehearse, and all of Paul's comments during the rehearsal were used by OJ when he would go on the pregame show.
So he took Paul McGuire's info.
No, it was Paul's mostly, I must say, the strategy. We had met with the coaches and met with players, and Paul would always have great stuff. And then what we had to do after a couple of games went by in this fashion, we were actually throwing the rehearsal. In other words, we made things up.
Just to see if OJ was going to use them?
Yes, he did. A couple things he did. Yes.
But how difficult was it?
But that's my searing memory of OJ, working with us at NBC.
But how difficult was it? You're broadcasting an NBA Finals game. Meanwhile, you got this going on where Tom Brokaw on news, Bob Costas is involved in this, and then now back to you, Marv. So just the rhythm of trying to keep that going. How difficult?
Yeah, it was most unusual. And Dick Ebersol, the president of NBC Sports, was sitting to our left in the stands, but he had an earpiece, so he heard exactly what was going on. And he was kind of directing the activity, also. Send it back to Tom, go over to Bob, all this kind of stuff. And, by the way, there's Charles Smith with the jump shot, So it was really the most unusual situation I have been in on the air.
Talking to the Hall of Famer, Marv Albert, former Knicks broadcaster and the lead play-by-play voice, the NBA on NBC. I was also wondering with style now, how is play-by-play style, has it changed very much in your opinion?
In terms of basketball, no, very little, I would have to say. In other sports, perhaps there's more talking than in the past. I watch a lot of baseball, and yeah, I find on TV there's sometimes more talking than it had been in past years. But I don't think in basketball it's changed very much.
Well, I was wondering, I love silence, like the use of silence in a building.
Exactly, yes. I agree.
And it feels like that's kind of a lost art, that when somebody does it, like we feel like we got to go wall to wall when we talk, when we describe the action, when sometimes you just pause. That makes it even more exciting with what you're going to call next.
Well, I totally agree with that, and you have to let, particularly on radio's different because you're describing every move that players make or whatever's happening. But on TV, you can certainly you have to learn to use the crowd, and there are color commentators who really pull back, which is great. They come in at the right time. That's why it was a pleasure working with people like Steve Kerr, Reggie Miller. I don't want to leave people out. The Czar, of course, Mike Fratello. But there are some people, I won't name names, who talk too much. There's no question. And you can use the crowd. The crowd is very important, particularly at times like this during the playoffs, where the crowds are at another level. I mean, what takes place at the Garden now? I was at the Philadelphia Knicks series, and it was so loud. And then people talk about when Brunson got hurt and came out in the second half after going back to the locker room. They compared it to the Willis Reed return in 1970 in the championship series against the Lakers, where he was not supposed to play, came out at the last minute. And I did that game on radio in New York, and that was the loudest crowd I've ever heard at Madison Square Garden. When Willis came on the court, the Lakers couldn't believe it. I remember Chamberlain and West, the whole group, just stopped they were at the completion of their warm-ups, and they just turned and looked toward the area where Willis was walking out. And they were aghast. I mean, they couldn't believe he was playing. Then he comes out, of course, and hits the two jump shots, and then Walt Frazier just took over, and they beat the Lakers for the championship.
Yeah,
but that was the loudest crowd I've ever heard, anywhere.
What do you think what do you see when you see this Knicks team?
I see such a scrappy, surprisingly excellent team that is hampered by injuries, and that's unfortunately eventually going to, we're going to see that's going to take its toll, because they're missing Julius Randle, but they've been able to, survive very well without him, because Brunson, Hart, and DiVincenzo have been terrific. And Anunoby, who is out again for tonight's game, has been such a key. And so has Mitchell Robinson in terms of rebounding. So they are so hampered, but they're so interesting because despite all this, they've been able to play extremely well, particularly Brunson. He amazes me. The footwork, the shooting touch, so difficult to guard, how far he's come from his days, not only at Villanova, but in Dallas, too. But he didn't get the playing time there. But I don't know how he made the quick recovery from the previous game. He couldn't elevate when he had that bad game, and came out, and the last game, Game 5, was unbelievable, But there are so many injuries now. I mean, even Jamal Murray's taking a lot of criticism, but he is hurt. I mean, that's I mean, Edwards did a good job on him, and Minnesota's a very good defensive team, but still, he's hurt. And the same is true of Tyrese Halliburton, who's hurt. It happens. It becomes a different sport in the playoffs because a lot of fouls that are called during the regular season are not called. It's a more bruising game. It's it's played differently in the playoffs, and then you have these swings in terms of the scores, which happened before. I mean, that's happened before. One game the team wins by 30, 40, 50, and then the next game it's like it never happened.
I know.
No.
Well, it's great to talk to you. Do you ever shout out yes?
No, no. But I'll be sometimes walking, very innocently, and somebody will yell yes. Scares me.
Pizza shows up, and you go yes.
Yes. Yeah.
Coffee for Marv. Yes.
Yeah. That's good. You do that very well, Dan.
Thank you, Marv. Hey, great to talk to you. And
Same here. Always a pleasure.
All right. That's the great Marv Albert. Called 25 All-Star games, 13 NBA Finals, 8 Super Bowls, 8 Stanley Cup Finals. The Dream Team, their run through the 1992 Olympics. So he's been a busy man. Great to talk to him. Yeah, 3 years ago today, announced his retirement.